Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, a place to find connection and a sense of belonging, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we talk about sensitivity and the richness that it adds, the strengths we have because of our sensitivity, and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional.
Hey there, to the creatives, healers, sensitives, and to thinkers. Today's episode, I'm talking with Heidi Tam, who is one of the participants who just finished up the 10-week online HSP course. And she's an introvert. She was willing to jump on with me and do a recording. So what you're going to hear is a first-time conversation about what the course was like for her. And she talks about it felt like it was a lot of money, and she talked to her husband about it. She talks about her therapist, who is the one that told her she was an HSP and told her, I can't remember if she told her about the groups, but I want to give a shout out. I have her permission. We talk about this during the episode. Her therapist is Crystal Paul from crystalpaulcounseling.com. I've got her information in the show notes if you happen to be in Heidi's area, and we talk about this during the episode. It's just really a lovely, candid conversation. I'm going to be really honest with you. It's 7:00 at night. I don't record it this time. We just got off the call and I edited the episode. I haven't done show notes. I'm tired. I'm not even sure what we talked about. And so what I usually do is I either take notes when I'm recording or I do the show notes, and then I look at the show notes to record the intro so that you know what to expect. But I did ask the typical questions of what were you expecting from the course? Did it meet your expectations? If somebody is an HSP and thinks that, I've read all the stuff about being an HSP, why would I want to take this course? I think it's really helpful, especially if you're not only considering taking the course. I say this with each of these episodes, that it's really a great chance to see where you're at with knowing your HSP traits, where you're at with boundaries, perfectionism, talking about your gremlins. And I noticed too that during this episode, I think because I'm just a little on the tired side tonight, I usually share some of my gremlins that are going on, and I just was really too tired to even pay attention. And I'll be honest with you that I'm tired. I probably should stop working for tonight, trying to get these extra episodes out on Thursdays in addition to getting regular weekly episodes out. It's a lot of work right now. It's the holidays, and I really want people to get the experience of hearing other people that have experienced the online HSP course from different perspectives and different people that have taken it. I'm kind of have my little taskmaster on, and as you know, she doesn't have a lot of empathy, and she's really good at getting stuff done imperfectly, as it is, whatever we're going to do. So I think that you will enjoy this episode. If you're enjoying this podcast, you can really help me out. If you're open to rating and reviewing it, I will try and remember to put instructions in the show notes. It really helps when you share the podcast. It's growing. Lots of people are listening to it, and I really want everybody to know about the trait of being an HSP. And now, on to the show. Hey, Heidi, thank you so much for jumping on with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Patricia.
I'm curious to know, when you decided to take the course, were you thinking about it for a while, or did you know right away that you wanted to take it?
I thought about it for a little while. I originally heard about the course when you had posted your podcast with Jen that kind of outlined the different modules. Mm-hmm. And I thought all of them really resonated with me. I think the biggest thing was just the cost of the course. And it was something that I discussed with my husband, and he said, I used to work out with a personal trainer. And he said, well, how much money did you put towards that throughout the years? And I said, oh, well, actually quite a bit more than what the cost of the course was. And he said, well, if you view this course as self-improvement, then it seems as a no-brainer to invest in it. So after we had that conversation, I thought, oh, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah. And so once you took the course, do you feel like you got the value for your money? And we didn't discuss before we recorded, so I really want you to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I think I did. I had a different idea in my mind going into it, thinking that I was going to walk away with like, okay, steps 1, 2, and 3. If I follow all of these things, I will be the greatest HSP. Obviously, that's not how this course is set up, but I've come to really appreciate that because every HSP is different. So we can't just follow a step-by-step process. It's all about learning how we are and how we respond to things. And so, yeah, I do feel like I got my money's worth out of it.
And here's what I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm correct. I think that we don't learn how to tune in with ourselves and how to get in touch with what we want, and we're told how we're supposed to be. So I think that we do tend to externalize, so we want to find the rules so we can get it right. And this course is really all about tuning into who are you, what are you feeling, what do you need, how can you get that? It's messy. There are no rules. There are no steps. So it is something very different. Does that feel like that fits?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that describes it really well.
What skills do you feel like you're walking away with since the course has already ended?
I was actually reflecting on this, just knowing that we were going to be chatting. One of the big things is just being a little bit more self-aware of what I already was doing, self-care practices that I didn't really view as self-care, boundaries that I had set without really knowing that they were boundaries. So just the ability to be a bit more mindful, just have self-compassion for myself for those boundaries and self-care that I've set up.
Yeah.
So those are some big ones.
Yeah. What was unexpected about the course?
One big unexpected thing was how comfortable I was going to feel with the group. Because group settings, for me, I don't like them unless I really know the group. A lot of the trainings that I take for work are with coworkers that I've been with for 10 years. This, for me, was very different, just jumping on a video call with complete strangers. But because we had something so significant in common, I think it instantly made me feel comfortable. Being introverted and a little bit more reserved when it comes to group conversations, you mentioning to me, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to, don't feel obligated. That was huge for me in that first session that we had. Because I was definitely, I think I mentioned, my gremlins are up. I was feeling like maybe I should talk more, but you saying it's okay. If you don't want to, if you don't have anything to say, you don't have to say something. So that I really appreciated.
And it was interesting for me just because I'm obviously a very verbal processor. So it was really good practice for me to trust that you would jump in if you wanted. And every once in a while I would say like, hey, I just want to check in. Are you feeling okay? Is there anything you want to share? How was that? Did you feel any pressure put on the spot when I checked in with you?
No, I appreciated that because sometimes for me, especially in groups, I like to observe to allow other people time to talk. And I know that everybody in my group, they had some significant things they wanted to share. So I didn't want to just jump in. So you saying that allowed me that opportunity if I needed to.
Do you feel like there was ample time for you to share what was important to you, or did you feel like the extroverts took over and you didn't get a chance to get the time you wanted?
No, I think there was adequate time for everybody to share. And the topics changed so much that I felt like I took something from everything that we discussed, even if it wasn't what I had thought about discussing during that session.
How was it for you being online? Had you done anything online before?
I've done a few webinars. They're just auditory, not visual. So I actually appreciated the visual aspect of this, so being able to see people's faces, because that's how I really interact best with people, is to see facial expressions, body language, that sort of thing. So it made me more comfortable. Had it just been all on the phone or something like that, where I could just hear people, it'd be different.
Did you feel a sense of connection even though we weren't in the same room together?
I did, yeah. Yeah, a lot of the things the lady shared, I just, often I'm like, I just want to give you a big hug or a big high five. So that's the downside, obviously, of being on the internet. But
Sure. If someone is thinking about taking the course, but they're thinking, that's really a lot of money. I know a lot about HSPs. I've taken a lot of things. Like, what is this going to offer me that's different than something else I've experienced? Are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, I would say, there's a lot of resources out there, but this is a good way to kind of bring that all together and a chance to discuss it with other HSPs, to have that sounding board. to just really get that experience where, oh, I'm not alone. Often things were shared in group that I was like, I feel the exact same way. Okay, great. I am not alone in this. Like I'm not crazy for thinking that. So I think that's a big component of it too, because I have a few HSP friends in my life, but I don't live close to them. So I don't have conversations with them often. So this was a way for me to really have that camaraderie with other HSPs.
So it sounds like you really got a chance to see parts of yourself and other people that you thought maybe you were crazy, or you didn't say weird, that's my word, but to see it in somebody else and go like, oh, I've got all kinds of compassion for you. And that's the same thing I have in me. Doesn't look so bad.
Exactly. Yeah. Cause growing up, I always thought something was off with me. Like, why am I so sensitive? Why is nobody else feeling this way? What's wrong with me? And I hated feeling that way, obviously, but joining this group definitely made me feel less alone.
Mm-hmm. How did the length seem for you? We did 10 weeks for your group. How was that time-wise?
I think it was good because it gave enough time to cover the topics. I honestly would like it to be longer if it could. Thankfully, my group decided to continue our sessions afterwards. So that way we're still getting that group aspect out of it. So that's huge for me.
Right. Your group is continuing to meet on Zoom on your own, and then you have your own Facebook group also. Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
It is. Yeah, just having never met them in person, but I feel like, I've known them forever.
Yeah, and your group also chose to communicate through the group emails during the week.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which that was great too, especially, having had to miss the last session. I felt it was a good avenue for me to say, hey, I'm really sorry that I'm going to miss this with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else about the course that strikes you that I'm not asking about that you think would be helpful for someone who's like, why should I take this?
Well, I think it really is just a good way to, and I might have already said this, but rephrasing it, to reflect on what it is that you may already be doing that you don't recognize is, self-care or boundary setting or perfectionism. It is just a really good opportunity to have a sounding board and to bring all the things that you are learning about being an HSP together.
Yeah. How much did you know about the trait of being an HSP before you took the course?
Not much. I found out earlier this year about HSPs from my therapist. She mentioned to me in one of our sessions that she thought perhaps I was one and to take the test. So I took it and definitely was. And she had mentioned your podcast because she listens to it. I do long drives commuting to work. I downloaded a few episodes and I was really starting to connect with all the topics that we're on. And I think I binged all your episodes in, a matter of 2 weeks. So that was basically all I knew was what I had listened to on your podcast leading up to the course. And then throughout the course, books were mentioned, other websites, things of that matter. And so I grabbed some of those too. I've been reading them.
And then through taking the course, did anything change about your knowledge or understanding of being a highly sensitive person or how it showed up for you? Was there anything new that came up?
I think the biggest thing for me is just embracing it and being proud of it. Just reflecting on the things that I do and that I do really well and going, that's because I'm an HSP. So be proud of it. And going into the course, that's really what I wanted to get out of it, was to walk away knowing that being an HSP is not a bad thing, that it's really great, and to recognize the characteristics of being an HSP in myself that make me who I am.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful. And I think you already sort of said this, that taking the course, you realized that there were a lot of things you were already doing. You just didn't know it. And this is kind of the same thing, that when we know who we are, we know what our traits are, we're educated, empowered, and enlightened HSPs, we don't have that sense of like, I'm too much. I mean, it's not like taking the course fixes things and all of a sudden we don't struggle anymore. We're human and we're alive. And as long as we're living, we're going to have struggles. but that shift from something's wrong with me to this is how I am and this is what I need.
Exactly. Yeah. A recent example for Thanksgiving, or my dad and stepmom came over, and I really like to cook, and I plan a month in advance for all my menu items, which they never change. So why I plan, I don't know, but it's just because it's something that I really like to do. And I didn't feel like I was being too controlling by cooking everything in the kitchen. People asked if they could help, and I said, no, thank you. I want to do this by myself, but I appreciate you asking. And then I set dinner up a certain way, and I was able to look at it and go, I'm not being controlling. Because the old me would have thought, oh, am I being too much about this? Like, oh, just let people do what they want. But I looked at it more as, this is what I like to do, and this is how I like to set things up. So I'm going to do that.
It sounds like you got clear about what you love and were able to reframe it instead of seeing it negatively and really embracing, this is what makes me happy and brings me joy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Actually, one phrase that I started using now is reframe, don't shame.
I love that.
And I shared it with my husband. And the other day he was sitting somewhere, he wasn't with me, but he could hear me. And I said, God, he was like, reframe, don't shame. Because I knew I was mad at myself for something. So
we didn't talk about this before we recorded, so I'm happy to take it out. Do you want to give a shout out to your therapist and say what area you're from in case people, because I think it's amazing that your therapist told you about the trait, and that can be a very personal thing. And so we can totally cut this out.
No, I'll share. So I live in Moscow, Idaho, and Crystal Paul is my therapist, and I really appreciate her sharing it.
Crystal, thank you so much. And if anybody wants to look up Crystal, if you're in Moscow, Idaho, sounds like she's HS friendly, and I love hearing that about therapists. So yeah.
And she's an HSP herself.
Yay.
That's because she didn't really know much about it. And then when she started researching it, she's like, oh, I totally am. So she's been just spreading the word.
I love that. I have so many people that join the closed Facebook group and they say, my therapist told me about it. I'm always curious to know who's the therapist, but I don't want to be intrusive because it can be very personal. But I just really thank you, Crystal. Appreciate it. Is there anything else that you think is important to share about that you got out of the course?
I really would just say, if people are worried about the money, kind of like the example I shared for me, is if you are invested in your self-care in some other form or fashion, just kind of view it in that way, right? I mean, we buy food to be healthy. So this is soul food, really. Don't let that be a deterrent to take the course. I think it's incredibly helpful, and you might form friendships that will continue on past it.
Yeah, I think self-care and money can be for some HSPs really difficult. I'll spend money on my dog at the vet. I'll grumble about it, but whatever the dog needs, my kids need stuff, my husband needs something, medical things. But when it comes to spending money on myself, especially if it's a large amount, that's really challenging. And it's so hard to articulate to people the value and why when we put ourselves first, we end up having so much more to give, not only to ourselves, but the people around us. It's a really hard one to translate when there's money involved.
Yes. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But this is totally worth it.
Yeah. I noticed changes in you throughout the group, and it's what you're saying, that you're really starting to embrace who you are and how you show up. And we talked a little bit before we recorded. Do you want to share a little bit about missing the last group and that conversation that we had?
Yeah, I was on a work trip that last week, and the day we had the last session, I knew I was going to be working a 12-hour day, so it wouldn't have gotten over until the group had started, and then I knew I would be exhausted. I wrote to the group and said, hey, I think I'm going to have to miss it. I'll try to make it if I can. I decided that self-care was more important at the end of the day, so missing the session I was sad about, but I also recognized that if I tried to do a 12-hour workday and the long session with it, I wouldn't have contributed and I wouldn't have gotten as much out of it.
Right. And we were talking before we were recording that had this happened before you had taken the course, your natural inclination would have been to what?
do both. No matter what, just to get it all done.
Right.
So I could check something off the list.
So much of this course is really about getting in touch with what works for you and what doesn't. And I think many of us have this ability to push through to the detriment, and it hurts ourselves because we're loyal, we're committed, we're conscientious. It's not what always works for us. And what I hear you saying is, I got really clear that I was spent after 12 hours. And as much as I wanted to be here and show up, the most loving and gentle thing I could do for myself was to not show up. And you felt okay with that.
Yes. Yeah, I did. I didn't feel guilty about it because I had shared with the group that I wished I could be there, but I wasn't sure if I could make it. And so I owned it. I was honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody was very supportive. And as we talked about before we were recording, I said, if you're up to showing up for part of it, I'd love that. If not, you need to take care of yourself. And I think so much of what happens in the group is having that nurturing voice outside of you modeled so that then you can internalize it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. And I think you did a fabulous job with that during the whole length of the course.
Thank you. And ideally, that's what we would have gotten from our parents or caregivers. We would have had our feelings acknowledged and shown how to work with them and how to embrace them. But many of us didn't get that. And we got that push through. And that's, again, why the 10 weeks to me is so important, that it really gives people a chance to integrate what we're learning. And as things come up or people have to miss or they're late or they need to eat or they want to not be on video, I can model it's taking care of yourself is really important. And then what I hear you saying is that you were able to internalize that, which is really what the goal is. It's what we should have gotten when we were young. If we didn't get it, we need to get it modeled somewhere else.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's better late than never, I think.
Well, and what we know is that you put HSPs in a good environment and they're going to fare better than non-HSPs, which is why this is such an effective method or model, because HSPs want to learn, we want to grow, we want to get that information. So put us in a nurturing environment and we're just going to thrive.
Right, exactly. And I think I can only speak for our group, but we all did.
Yeah. Yeah. Across all three groups. I mean, there's nobody that I can say like, I don't know about that person. Everybody was in a different place. Everybody had a different experience, but I think what everybody got out of it, and I mean, nobody's come to me and said that stunk, but I don't know.
Well, I hope they don't.
Well, if it's true, I'd want to hear about it, but
right. That's true. Be honest. That's actually another thing that I wanted to mention was you in groups, whenever you felt a gremlin or something, you were very honest about it, very upfront. And I really respected that. And I think a lot of us in the group started doing that. And I've been trying to do that in my personal life, is like, hey, I'm just going to be straightforward with you right now. Like, this is bothering me. What we do, I don't know, but I just want you to know that I'm overwhelmed.
How is that for you when you've done that? How do you feel and how are the people around you responding?
For the most part, I've tried it with my husband because he's safe. But he's responded really well to it because he has mentioned to me in the past, hey, I want you to be honest and straightforward with me, because if you don't tell me, then I don't know. And it just leads to further issues. It's been really nice. I feel, I guess, less like I'm hiding or trying to cover it up and pretend like I'm fine. Just embracing it. Again, it's huge for me.
Yeah. I know for me, as I've gotten older and more comfortable saying what's going on, like I just don't feel like I've got that pretext of having to pretend like everything's okay. And I just feel like I can just show up how I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really vital skill that I'm still practicing, but I want to apply throughout the rest of my life, because I have spent the majority of time growing up being like, oh, everything's great, but it wears me out. So just being able to say, yeah, no, I'm not cool, or this is really bugging me, just feeling comfortable with that.
And it really allows for more intimacy in your relationships. If I'm willing to show you what's going on with me, and you said it, that I would model when we started out, having done the beta course with Jen, and we would do the how the heck are you warm up every week. And I always had my gremlins like, I don't do it as well as Jen, and Jen has a sweet voice. And I would just talk about that, or my concern, like I want everybody to get something from the group and I'm afraid you're not, or being really tired. I'm really tired tonight and I can show up, but I just need to call out what's going on. Exactly what you said happened, that it gave people permission to share what was going on with them. And I think that's why we had so much intimacy and openness in the group.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share before we end?
I can't think of anything else. Yeah, I think I've shared the highlights anyways.
Thank you so much for getting on this recording.
You're very welcome.
All right. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you. You too.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're thinking about taking the HSP online courses, you can find more information at unapologeticallysensitive.com. Just go to the HSP groups page. The link to this is also in the show notes. This episode, if all goes as planned, will be coming out on Thursday, December 12th, I believe, 2019. There's an early bird discount if you sign up and register before Sunday, December 15th, 2019. The new courses are going to launch the week of January 12th, 2020, if you're listening to this in real time. If it's sometime in the future, go ahead and check that page. My plan is to run these courses a few times throughout the year. If you have any questions about the course, any concerns, please feel free to reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you're moving through this holiday season with ease. It could really be a challenging and stressful time for the most empowered, educated, and enlightened HSP. It's just a very busy time of year. So my hope is that you're having time to rest, replenish, you're feeling the joy and abundance. This time of year can be really challenging for many people who don't have the families that they wish that they did. They experience loss. Maybe you don't celebrate the holidays. So I just want to be mindful that this is not always the best time of year for everybody. So my hope is that you're getting the support, the rest, the comfort, the nurturing that you need. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.